All right, let's change the water pump on the Xterra today. Should be fun. So the water pump is kind of in with the timing gear. Lots of fun. You got to remove some pulleys in the front of the engine, the belt, the fan, and then you got to go into the timing area through some access panels to change this water pump. Whatever. So the problem is a lot of these older Xterras, 05s, which mine is, had not so great timing chains from the factory. They're a little sharp, they wear down the guides. Big problem with them, right? Somehow mine has eluded a problem in 135, 140,000 miles, whatever it's got on it now. And it doesn't make any noise. Should I be changing the timing gear? Yeah, I probably should. Am I going to change the timing gear? Nope. We're going to just change the water pump on this one. Have my reasons. One of my reasons is I don't think this engine is going to stay around much longer, and I don't want to invest all the time and money to do the timing on an engine I plan on pulling. So let's get started. All right, so let's start by draining the antifreeze. If you don't drain the antifreeze, you're going to have a problem because the water pump is behind the timing cover. The timing cover is where your oil is. If you take the water pump out without draining the antifreeze, you are going to fill your engine with antifreeze. And we know that's bad, right? If you plan on reusing your antifreeze, make sure you're using a clean container, you know, all that normal stuff. I had to take off like my rad skid, my other skid, because I've got the straight axle swap. If you don't have the straight axle swap, which most of you probably don't, you gotta take a whole bunch of other stuff off too. So there is the petcock right here, and oh, look at that. So I'm gonna let that drain, and then we'll move on to the next stop. All right, we gotta take all this stuff off. You know, the stuff I just had off a few months ago. We're gonna take intake off. We're gonna have to take off the shroud and the fan, and then the bracket as well. So we will. You can sometimes snake it in there to get the front cover off separately, but I never have too much luck. Whoa! So we'll just take this 2 hole bolts off the back cover too, pull it up. Now with that out of the way, we can get these two. All right, loosen the big hose clamp here. I just take the whole cover off because it's probably just going to be in my way. You might have more stuff holding your connectors on. A lot of my stuff has disappeared over the years. There is a hose, so I usually just pick it up and throw it back. Like so. And it's out of the way. Now, oh look, it's beautiful down here. Should probably change the belt wire at it too. I'm also not going to do that. All right, so I got a couple 10mm screws here. We're gonna have to just kind of loosen this. I'm gonna take the upper rad hose off, easier to get it out. Eventually we're gonna have to get to those 4 bolts on the fan, which are so much fun. I'm glad I just did that. And then we'll be able to lift everything out. There are a few connectors you need to be aware of over here. So I did end up taking the AC fan out too, because this thing sucks. But now it's out, and now we have so much more room to take more stuff out. So we'll get working on that fan next, which is kind of sucky. And if your fan clutch is bad, you might as well change it. And if your pulley on the bracket behind it's bad too, that bearing goes bad all the time too. I've changed that a few times now. And just some fun real quick. The water pump is behind, as you can see. See this? See that panel right here that's behind everything? Yeah, it's in there. Thanks, Nissan. So cool of you. First, loosen the bolts on the fan, right? I just did that. Makes it a little easier, but don't take it off because the belt's on that pulley, and that pulley's going to come off, and it's going to be a big mess. So now, before you take it actually off, and you probably should know this if you're this deep in, is go ahead and take the tension off and take the belt off first. So I'm going to need my second hand for this, so you just have to use your imagination. Alright, so you got to get these 4 bolts off. There's like an inch of room. Listen, if you don't have ratcheting wrenches by now, just go buy yourself some. Christmas is coming. If you celebrate, even if you don't, just like treat yourself, because this would be so much worse without them. Thank God I have this. Now, if you haven't had this fan off in a while, it may not pull off as easily as mine. And I'll tell you what, mine's probably not going to pull off that easy. All right, you don't want to pull against the bearing too much anyway. I'm going to need 2 hands, but basically you got to work this guy loose, get it off, because we still have more to take off before we can get to that access panel. All right, fan is out. It was on pretty tight, and I literally put it in a few months ago. All right, so now we have to take off this bracket that holds the tensioner and this fake pulley that's unnecessary. So we got to take the belt off a little bit more just to give access. And then there's going to be, I think they're 14s, 3 or 4 of them. All right, so you got one here, one here, one here, and then one hiding at the bottom. And there are 14s. So we'll take these off, and you see this whole bracket's gonna come right on out. All right, so I cleaned off the 2 access panels that have to come off. The water pump is behind this one, but this one we have to take the tensioner out for the timing gear. Yes, we have to do that to change the water pump, because the timing gear is what runs the water pump. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these bolts, get these covers off. From my understanding, these are also siliconed on, so they might be a little tough to get off. Just use caution and care in taking them off, because you don't want to bend them. They need to, you know, keep oil in the engine. So let me go ahead and get at that, and I'll be right back. All right, so you've got to compress the chain tensioner here. There's a little squiggly wire. You squeeze that with your hand, and then you've got to press back on the guide carefully. You don't want to break anything. And then at the same time, with your third hand, you stick, I had a paper clip, it probably should be a little thicker, it seems to be holding in there, and that keeps it compressed. And now you'll see that there's no pressure, because we're going to need this to be loose so that we can get around the water pump, the timing chain. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to take these out now. You got to be super careful, because if anything falls down there, you're done. Done. Yeah, so just real quick, here's the chain tensioner out. It's like a little hand grenade. We're going to pull the pin later. So put this somewhere careful. There is a paper gasket on the back, or some type of gasket that looks pretty fragile. And if you're not replacing this, should I replace this? Yeah, probably. But I should also be replacing all the timing. So everything's working. I'm not messing with it. It's going back in. But yeah, be careful with this guy. Now we're also going to get some slack from that side to this side. So we're going to back off on the engine about a little bit, turn or so, half turn or so, and you'll watch the tension get loose here. See, it's already loose. So you don't want to go too much, you just want to go enough that you're going to be able to get this off. I think that's enough. So there's going to be 3 bolts on the water pump. I don't know if we can see them. They're going to come out, and then the top and the bottom one basically are threaded as well. And you're going to use a larger bolt, I believe it's an M8, to push the water pump out. So let me go ahead and work on this, getting these bolts out, making sure we got the right tension. All right, so here's the water pump. I'm going to show you this out of the truck because it's going to be a lot easier before I start taking the old one out. First, I just want to show you. People complain because there's grind marks. See these grind marks? Oh my God. Do people not realize what those grind marks are? This is the company that makes the factory water pump for Nissan. So when they sell it under their own name, they've got to grind off the Nissan logo and part number. I'll show you when I get it out. These bolts, so the 10mm bolts go through, right? But there's threads. See the threads? Yeah. So you take these M8 bolts, and what it's going to do, it's kind of like an old brake rotor. Some of them have this. As you tighten these into the old water pump, it's going to push it out. So it'll push out the water pump from the truck. So that's why it's like that. That's how you get the water pump out. So I'm about to do that now. So we're just going to tighten to pull it out. You want to kind of do a little at the top, a little at the bottom. You can see it slowly walking out. Now, there shouldn't be any antifreeze in here because I did drain it, but who knows? And they also got to be careful of the chain, which is right here. So keep an eye on that because you don't want to screw up your chain. I can feel it coming. I wonder why they had to grind that off. All right, so carefully get those bolts in, and then very carefully without the camera, and then just tighten them all kind of evenly until you know it's seated in there right. Make sure the chain's on. I've already double checked that. And torque specs about, it says 12 to 15, so I'm gonna just basically make sure they're all even and right about, good and tight. I don't like torque specs that low. I don't feel like, I don't know. What do those engineers know anyway? Alright, so once we get this all tightened, we're going to put that tensioner back in. And then we gotta put these covers on, and then put all the parts back on that we took off. Fun. All right, same thing with the tensioner. Gotta carefully get it back in place, get those bolts in, and then just get them good and tight. Probably same type of torque spec, but we're just gonna get them good and tight here. I'll tighten them up once we're done, and now we're going to release the tension back on this. So I think I'm going to do it carefully. I'm not just going to pull this pin, which I'm going to need both of my hands for. So nothing's good to do too rough on these engines. So I'll go ahead and get that back together. All right, now you got to put some RTV on these two covers before they go back in. There's no gasket, but there was RTV there. I prefer to use this Right Stuff. It really does, at least on the diff covers, 1 minute's what it needs, and then it's ready to go. Of course, mine's all gummed up, and I had to drill a hole in the side so that we can apply it. Don't judge me. Alright, so both covers are back on. I mean, this one should be good to go because it's the 1 minute stuff. I'll probably give it a little longer anyway. I might change the oil because I'm not sure if water got in through that to the engine, through the timing cover or not. I'm assuming it's gonna. So now we just gotta go ahead and put everything else back. It's gonna basically be what we did, but in reverse. Alright. Alright, and get your belt back on, and then you gotta put the fan back on and the shroud and all that stuff. So then you just put it all back together, just like you took it apart, but in reverse. Fill it up with coolant, burp it, you'll be good to go. Don't forget to, run it with the heat on. So the one issue I had, and this is probably something I could have avoided, was when I did take the water pump out, some water did get in the oil, into the timing case, and turned the oil into, milkshake. It was fine. I need to change the oil anyway, but there are other ways to drain some more antifreeze out of the block. You may want to look into that, and that way you can avoid it. I know some people say they'll jam some rags down into the timing so the water can't get through. Add a little more water than probably rags would have helped, but it was actually a good time for me to run a flush through it anyway. Hope this helped you out. So keep watching, give me a follow. I try to put up some content that's good. It's not always going to be the same or about the same vehicle. Sometimes it's fun stuff, sometimes it's boring stuff like changing a water pump. But hey, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.